Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Beyond the Smile with Dr. Mark. We decided we're going to do this episode in accents, so no, just kidding.
I'm going full Canadian.
Yeah, that's right.
I don't know what you're bringing to the table.
I'll do American.
Yeah.
So today I wanted to chat about, which is probably a topic that most people don't think about, though, is technology in dentistry. So I read an article about a month ago that blew my mind. I thought it was not real. We'll talk about it in a minute here. And I'm like, so I went down a rabbit hole and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is literally happening in the world.
You know more than me.
It's a little bit like, it was a little bit like sci-fi movie, and it was interesting. So I'm curious from your perspective. I know that you're interested in AI. I know you and I have talked about that before, and technology. So how do you feel about like where technology and in the intersection of technology and dentistry and health, like where's that going, and what are your thoughts around that? I know we're at the start of it, but what's your sort of take and feel around all that?
Well, I mean, you can argue we're at the start of it. I would argue against that. I think the first sort of foray into technology, I mean, there are people out there that are old enough that remember like
right,
and all that kind of stuff, and so you look to other industries. You bring in turbines, so those things are much more quick and powerful. But the digital revolution is really where that started for me, and that really started with CAD/CAM style dentistry. I mean, you're going back almost 4 decades. Right?
Interesting.
And yet, still, I have patients that come in on the daily, and they're like, "Oh my God, like, what is this? Does anybody else have this?" And you're seeing it more and more. And my argument for digital is that if you really go back, even not that far ago, let's say 60, 70 years, you used materials that you had to be really kind of good arts and crafts kind of style to be able to generate a good result.
Right.
And that was very practitioner specific. Now, if you use a digital tool or a digital medium, that general standard of care immediately gets elevated and standardized, right? So that's the benefit really to I think the population at large.
Do you think from a consumer perspective, though, that we hear a lot of like in our industry, like you're going to lose the human side, the face-to-face, or do you think that in dentistry, there'll come a time where you have a robot hygienist, and I know you can't predict what's happening, but do you think that's going to happen?
Well, fun fact, it already has. So in China, there was actually a dental implant that was placed in a patient without a human present, right? So I don't know who administered anesthesia, et cetera, but my immediate concern is, okay, well, you have a live breathing patient.
Right.
What if they have a crisis? What if they move?
Right.
There's a health emergency. What if the anesthesia didn't take?
Right.
I don't think you can strip it out. So it's digital and technology is just an elevated, tool.
Right.
Technique, let's say, but you still have. I mean, I'm still tethered to what I can produce or do with my hands.
Interesting. Well, it's interesting you say that, because this is the article that I've read about this is in the U.S. It says a fully automatic robot dentist performs first human procedure. And I'm reading this. I'm like, is this for real? Like, did they actually do that? And they did. They literally had, and you can see, like, it's like, but now I'm thinking, is there a human behind using it? Like, they didn't give, like, it's no different than, I think, when Elon did his release of the robots, like, couple weeks ago, like the robots supposedly were controlled by humans, like humans were actually controlling it, so they're not fully automatic yet. And that's what I was wondering in this, but it just got me thinking, like, and now you're telling me that there's hygienists that were like, or dental procedures done in China that way, and it's like, are we really going to come to the point? I get it, there's going to be a human, but is there going to be like Dr. Mark and controlling all these machines in his practice one day?
I can conceive of it.
Yeah.
I mean, I have no idea how far in the future it is, but modern day robotics, in terms of, technically you could complete the task or do something, but it's the decision-making matrix that's underneath there in terms of how we respond to the human element, which is what you were first talking about. Right. So how do I filter empathy, right? How do I sit and hold space for that patient in that moment when they're going through something or something comes up, right? So that element, I think once, and I believe it probably will at some point in time, once AI and that level of capacity in terms of making those decisions is fully integrated. How much it costs,
right,
that kind of stuff. Who knows? What does it actually save? I don't know.
Right. Interesting. Are you using any AI right now in your practice at all, like behind the scenes? Are you using anything to like analyze data? Are you using any tools right now, or you're not there yet?
There are some fringe tools. There are different programs that will help kind of evaluate. X-rays tends to be kind of and because in this day and age, really, it's not the little, those little tiny,
right,
you're holding it up, looking, with one cross eyeball or magnifying glass. You've got digital imagery and 3D analysis of, much bigger sections of the human body and anatomy, and trying to integrate or understand all the different things that you're looking at in the interplay. That is on the rise, and so things that help you make those connections, that's where things are first starting to show up. But crunching data as a population, like, hey, our cavities on the uptick.
Right.
Not really.
But they're not using, like I was talking to an investment advisor say that she doesn't use it, but she said like obviously the fund managers use AI to analyze stock market trends and all those sort of things. And they've actually gone down their portfolio. Instead of having 80 stocks in their portfolio, now they're 40 because AI has actually told them it performs better. Like, just wonder behind the scenes, is there any of the, systems you use? Because, systems like dentistry systems, CRMs, anything, are they using any AI within what they're doing, or do you know of any that they're using?
The CRM would be the AI that we're using. It's like, hey, how do we...
Got it.
It used to be, you would get a postcard in the mail.
Right.
It's goofy little drawing. It's time for your cleaning. Reach out to the office.
Right.
All of that stuff is automated now.
Right. Okay.
Confirmations and that that level that's all automated, and it's really trying to make sure that with the level of care that we're trying to deliver, that the more mundane things are not forgotten.
Yeah. So a couple of things I was when I was researching this, I was curious about is one thing that came up is 3D printing teeth. So are you using 3D printing? Or are you seeing 3D printing? Like where's I'm assuming the application is for teeth?
It's for teeth, it's for appliances, it's for mouth guards. I mean, it really comes down to material selection, right? And some materials are better milled, right? So you're gonna, think Statue of David, right? He's in there.
Okay.
Hopefully you don't break him while you're uncovering him. But you basically craft it down, or you pare it down, whittle it down.
Okay.
Or yes, you can print, and both have different advantages and different applications, but those are the two primary modalities. And printing is very definitely on the rise. But there are cost factors, there are materials factors, there's just even some of the agents and the exhaust, etc.
Right.
Just facility concerns, right? So it's not every dental office that could just drop one in and say, okay, we're safe.
Right.
There's so usually they're still in commercial spaces, right?
Got it. Okay. How about one of the other areas I was looking at is laser usage in dentistry, and it reminded me, I'm a Dr. Evil and sharks with lasers on their heads. I don't know if anyone watched Austin Powers. It reminded me of that.
Mr. Bond, I expect you to die.
Yeah. So I'm wondering, how are lasers used? Is it like, Jonas like zapping cavities? Like, what are we doing with lasers in dentistry?
Lasers do almost, if you can dream it now, they can do it. So you have a lot of low-level laser technology, like light therapy. So you think about all these recovery labs where you're administering red light, etc. A lot of that stuff operates on mitochondria and cellular metabolism and biomodulation, bringing the right cells and body processes to an area to facilitate healing. So you can do that, and that's all cold laser technology. You can do hot laser technology where you're literally vaporizing or taking away tissue.
Interesting.
And now you've got all tissue lasers, which will get rid of tooth structure, cavity, bone if you need to.
Right.
So yeah, it's wide open.
And are you using it? Like, do you have? Yeah. Okay. Okay. It's not like something that it's coming here in 5 years. It's part of your practice.
No, I mean, when I was going through school, like, close to 30 years ago now,
Right.
we used things called like electrosurges, which were basically a radio frequency on a metal probe. It was literally like barbecuing stuff away. Lasers, the first time I was exposed to lasers was probably just after 2000 or so. And I mean, for sure they would have been around, just not commonplace. And now I bet you that type of laser, I would say probably 60% of practices would have one. Right?
Interesting.
Yeah.
One of the things that I was looking at, there's a company called Zipline that they use drones to deliver things to remote areas. So it's actually a fascinating company. It started in delivering blood and medical supplies in Rwanda because, moms were having babies or bleeding out. They didn't have supplies. So they brought mortality rate down by 60%.
Wow.
So now
did they also bring the doctor that would help with that?
I think so, maybe. So it's a really neat, it got me thinking, like, if there's remote areas, people don't maybe have the services, dentistry services there. During the pandemic, I assume there was things like teledentistry, virtual checkups, and things like that. I'm assuming that might have happened. I don't know. You tell me, because you were in the middle of it, obviously.
Yes.
Is there value, or is there still that happening? Like, if I'm in a remote area, can you do I know you can't do procedures virtually, but can you do checkups? Are you using any of that technology right now for any of that?
I'm not participating in it, but
okay.
my first year in practice, I practiced up in Yellowknife, and then I also did remote community flyout. So you jump on a little Cessna or Twin Otter. You'd take a trunk full of gear, and you'd go somewhere for a week and basically take on whatever came at you. But things like CAD/CAM would have been wonderful there, because typically those procedures take weeks normally to accomplish. Not so much now that you're printing things and milling things, but that's where that technology would come in. Now, from the virtual care or sharing things, this is where I get excited about things like the Apple Vision Pro or something like that. So if you can basically share your field of view with somebody else, and somebody else who's got a different skill set, because the limitation still with any given practitioner is their experience and their knowledge and what they've been exposed to.
Right.
So this is where I see the benefit of AI coming in. So there have been studies where, in the medical world, AI's diagnosis has outperformed doctors, or in some cases, I think even their empathy has outperformed doctors, which might speak to the tasks in front of a doctor. But if you could pack all of that information with you as a practitioner and filter your situation in through there, that's a tremendous benefit.
Yeah, interesting. I was actually listening to a podcast about that AI and health, and most doctors will see, I don't know how many, 1,000 patients, 1,500 patients, where the AI technology can analyze literally like millions and trillions of data points and come back to you. So you just, because as a human, you just can't do it all. Right?
Provided that data is being input
properly. It's because if not, it's garbage in, garbage out.
You get skewed things, and
100%.
this becomes the concern with AI. If you
biases,
you push out these mass. I mean, you've got to consider the source.
100%.
Always you got to consider 100%.
The source. Interesting. So we talked a little bit about what's happening today. Some future stuff I was looking at is nanotechnology.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm like, dude, you looked at, like, it fascinated me that there's, these little robots that can go in your mouth, and, I'm joking around, but like that could potentially like fix your cavities while you sleep. and I'm like, that's insane. But like this technology actually exists, not to the point where I said, but nanotechnology in dentistry actually exists right now.
It does, but it's more on the materials front. And so it's the behavior of what's happening with the agents that are interacting with tissues, et cetera, et cetera. But I'm equally fascinated by that, because my hope for dentistry is that there's a push toward conservatism, right? So, it doesn't matter what I do to somebody, or what level I do it at, or how great my lab is, or how exacting my, technique is. You now have something that's man-made. Right. As far as I'm concerned, everything that's man-made has some sort of lifespan. Right.
And
if you think about the amount of thermocycling, hot stuff, cold stuff, chewing, flexion, heaven forbid you're a clencher grinder, that kind of stuff, all those materials break down. They all behave differently, right? So if we can minimize the amount of dentistry that we're doing, or that dentistry that we're doing can be smaller, right, then the longevity is going to increase exponentially. So
crazy. Yeah, fascinated by that whole topic. But last one I want to talk about is one that is actually, I think you can order it right now or go to the store, is smart toothbrushes. So reading about like they track like how well you're brushing, and they give you, it's almost like there's AI powered ones that give you data. And I mean, I don't know what that even, but do you think like those are gimmicks, or are they actually like useful right now? Or
yeah, so now you're going to get into personality analysis, right? So anybody who's dealt with the public knows that there's a whole different gamut of personalities out there. So, you know, if you've got a person who loves to know how things work,
fair enough,
yeah, I can see that. You know, as I've joked about before, the brush you use is better than the one that you don't. So if there's anything that inspires you to do more or better,
do it.
Great. You know, I personally don't know anybody who looks at those data points and says, man, I'm only like 90%. I got to figure out how to up my game.
Right. Well, I wouldn't even know what to look at. That's why I laugh, because I'm like, I'm seeing some of the things. I'm like, well, I don't even know what that means. Like, so I wouldn't even know how to analyze what it's telling me, other than like, you're brushing too hard, or you're whatever it may be. Right.
Well, the number of times that I tell people, you know, the simple low tech things that they should be listening for or hearing with their brush, and they're like, oh, didn't know that. It's like, so it's the same thing. Like you talk about the phone. It's, you know, sorry, we're talking about phones. But if you give somebody a tool and you don't give them any instruction, and now they're left to their own devices, that, you know, that we're letting them down.
Yeah. Interesting. So now I'm going to put you in you're the developer. So, if there's something, have you been thinking about, or something that comes to mind, you're like, man, if we could invent a dental tech that would like help fill in the blank, is there anything that comes to mind for you? Is there something or something you've been exploring? Like, I know you and I have been talking about how you potentially integrate AI more into your practice. And is there anything that comes to mind? You're like, it would be great if we had this tool, like from a day-to-day perspective for you.
Yeah. From my standpoint, I'll just speak from my practice. So my practice is very high touch, very high feel, very relationship based. So my objective is to elevate a patient's understanding of themselves, you know, give them quote unquote control, let them make the best decisions for themselves. But because there's so much dialogue in and around that, right? The single greatest thing that would make my life easier is if we had some sort of tool that would, you know, record, encapsulate, share in a meaningful, understanding way to the patient, so that, you know, that reinforces that messaging, right? We know how life works. So you go somewhere and somebody's talking to you about, I don't know, something on your car, and you're like, this is a big deal, right? And then you go home and your hot water tank is like cratered, and your kid's in trouble at school. Suddenly, I'm not sure if my car's important.
Car's a big deal anymore.
So, you know, it's really just kind of more about helping support, I think, patients through that process, and helping deepen the understanding.
Right.
I really think that that's what people deserve the most, is a thorough understanding of what's going on.
Right.
And then let them
make the decision,
choose and control. Yeah. And then maybe the last little thing is, from a material standpoint, I would love it if we could get to the place where we're either printing or milling and working with actual biologic materials. So let's not put porcelain back in there. Let's not put, you know, resins back in there. Let's not put gold back in there. Let's put enamel.
Interesting.
Right.
What if we just we could just do something and you just grow more teeth?
I think about timing on that. I don't know. But maybe there's.
You're like,
maybe
in 6 years you'll have your tooth back.
Exactly. Maybe you can fertilize that. I'm not sure how that works. But
interesting.
Yeah.
So is there any technology that, like, recently that you've been using, like you've talked about? I know that you say you're very high touch, and I mean I'm a patient, so I know that from that side, in the sense of your the human side, but I also feel like you try to be ahead of technology and how it can help the patients or your practice, right? So is there anything recently or something you've been looking at from a technology perspective that you're excited about?
Yeah, well, I'm exploring a CO2 all tissue laser, one that basically can do pretty much everything. You know, you have patient outcome, and then of course you have the business side of things. So,
right.
You know,
for sure.
If it costs $10 million and you can't make any money and you go bankrupt, then that's not great. But I see lasers and a continued, finding the different modules or different programs, et cetera, that fully digitally integrate. So the more that we can take the human and the physical material out of the mix, those are all the things that I'm looking for. So again, every single time we take a material that expands or contracts or behaves some way out of the mix and we just use data, the more accurate the result becomes. So that's always my quest.
Interesting. Yeah. Interesting. Fascinating. It was, like I say, it was fascinating learning about, even teaching myself about all the technology, because we, in the space I live in marketing, there's lots of technology and changes and stuff that I always don't think about all the other verticals that are affected by technology. And I don't mean the negative way. There are advancement in technology and AI and all stuff. So I'm fascinated going down this path of saying how much it's changed from when I was a kid going to a dentist, and you've been in it, to today. Like it's night and day, right? So dentistry.
Yeah. And when you talk to people, I always encourage them to think that way. It's, whatever industry you're in, know people that are on the leading edge, and people that are kind of lagging behind. Right. And that the world is exploding. So there's no reason for you to believe that that's not happening in every industry. Right. And so those are the things that you should be celebrating and seeking out. And in your own industry, right? Don't be afraid to look somewhere else and say, hey, that's pretty cool. How can that apply to my world? Right. Because, ideas are ideas.
100% agree. Someone said that last night. We were talking about AI in education. Like, we should be looking at what they're doing in like Scandinavian countries or like Japan, where they're leading in that. I'm like, no one's ever done that. I should go look. I'm curious. Like, so that's a great way of looking at it, to say what are other people doing.
I know you have kids of phone age, right? So I have kids that are in different schools all across the city. Yeah. I've never been more fascinated. So I consider kids, and maybe this is where AI is going, kind of like the Borg mentality of Star Trek, right? So they're all interconnected. So you could be doing like bottle flipping. Right. Your kid is flipping bottles for whatever reason. I have no idea. And then one day, bottle flipping is dead. Yeah. And it's yo-yos. Yeah. But it's not yo-yos just in that class or that friend group or that school. It's everywhere.
Yeah. Right? Yeah. TikTok.
TikTok.
I blame TikTok for all of that. So, well, Mark, thank you for joining me again. That was fun. It was a good discussion. Something a little bit different. Talk about people don't think about technology and dentistry and healthcare and stuff. So it was fun chatting about that. So I'm sure there'll be new stuff coming out. So it'll be exciting as you get into more technology. I had to chat a little bit more. So if anyone's listening, if you guys have questions, thought about, like, please do reach out. To Dr. Mark, if there's anything about the technology side. If not, we will see you next time. And thank you for joining us.
My pleasure.
Thanks.